Good day, senior high school learners. Welcome to our class of 21st century literature from the Philippines and the world. Before we start our new lesson, please prepare your SLM second semester week 1 so you will be guided in our discussion. And after our class, you are expected to give a short description in every period of the Philippine literary history. Okay? I am your teacher, Mr. JOVEN Sebandal. Alright, for today's lesson, we will focus on the Philippine literary history. First, we will define literature. The word literature is derived from the Latin term litera, which means letter. It has been defined differently by various writers. These are the following. According to Brother Azurin, literature expresses the feelings of people to society, to the government, to his surroundings, and to his fellow men, and to his divine creator. From Webster, literature is anything that is printed as long as it is related to the ideas and feelings of the people, whether it is true or just a product of one's imagination. Evolution of the Philippine literary history. First, we have the pre-colonial period. When we say pre-colonial, before the colonizers came to the Philippines. The evolution of this time, the evolution of Philippine literature depended on the influences of colonization and the spirit of the age. The first Filipino alphabet, called Alibata, was replaced by the Roman alphabet. Indigenous Philippine literature was based on traditions and customs of a particular area of the country. Ancient literatures were written in perishable materials like dried leaves, bamboo cylinder, and bark of the trees. Literatures were handed down to us orally. We have the two literary forms during the pre-colonial period. First, written literatures. Examples, riddles or bugtong. These are effective ways to inculcate the ability of logical thinking of the child. Epigrams or salawikain, it reflects the hidden meaning through the good lines and it provides good values. Poems or tanaga. These are common forms of poetry which has a quatrain with 7 syllables each with the same rhyme at the end of each line. Oral literatures. Examples, chant. Chant is used in witchcraft and enchantment, while ambahan is a traditional poetry of Hanuno Mangyans of Oriental Mindoro, which teaches lesson about life. And it is recited by parents to educate their children, by the youth expressing their love, by the old to impart experiences, or by the community in tribal ceremony. We have the Balaktasan. This is a Filipino form of debate done in verse. The term is derived from the surname of Francisco Balagtas, the author of Filipino epic Florante and Laura. The second colonial period, the Spanish colonial period, 1565-1897. The 16th century was the start of the deprivation of the indigenous Philippine literature. The Spanish colonial government finally got in the scene. They were able to manipulate literature by manipulating it under the religious orders. Literature revolved mainly on the themes of Spanish, European culture, and of course, the Roman Catholic religion. Literary influences during Spanish colonization. First, we have the Christian doctrine or Doctrina Christiana. Doctrina Christiana was the first book ever printed in the Philippines in 1593 by the Dominican Press. The Libro de Lingua Tagala by Fernando Bagumbanta is a Tagalog translations to the Spanish lines, still with the superiority of the Spanish language. The Passion. Passion is influenced by the Spanish context of Christianity. At least, it embodies several Filipino sentiments and values. The feeling of a Filipino mother towards a suffering son. Filipino writers in Spanish became conscious for the search of freedom. Pasyon dapat ipag-alab ng puso by Marcelo H. del Pilar, expressed his rebellious writing style and was identified. Pascual Poblets, Patnubay sa Binyagan, Struggle for Independence with Jesus' Life, Jose Rizal's Noli Me Tangere, and El Filibusterismo made a very powerful contributions to the awakening of Filipinos as it introduced the rejection of Spanish rule, and it also influenced the succeeding writers. The narrative poems Awit and Kuridum talked about world of royals, warriors, and lovers, the basic concept in Florante and Laura. Comedia, Francisco Baltasar's Florante and Laura, embodied the concept of colonization and oppression, which gave voice to their revolutionary action towards freedom. We have the third colonial period, the American colonial period. Philippine literature in Spanish times started to lose its track in the first decade. The poems of Fernando Maria Guerrero, Balmores, Sedishoho La Flor, novel, and many others discussed revolution and sentiments for patriotism and proved that the Philippine literature was used to claim freedom from the colonizers. Poetry in English was also founded. Zarzuela was overpowered by English drama. We have the fourth one, the contemporary period up to the present, from 1946 up to the present. This period started during the rebirth of freedom. The Americans returned in 1945, and the Filipinos rejoiced, and guerrillas fled to the mountain and joined the liberating American army. The period of activism in 1970 up to 1972. Many young people became activists to ask for change in the government. In the expression of this desire for change, writings of some youth who were fueled with nationalism in order to emphasize the importance of their petitions, The period of new society. The period of new society started on September 21, 1972. Almost all themes in most writings deals with the development and progress of the country, like green revolution, family planning, proper nutrition, environment, and drug addiction, and pollution. The new society tried to stop pornography, and those writings badly influenced the moral of the people. All school newspapers were temporarily stopped, and so with school organizations. The third one, the period of the Third Republic, 1981-1985. After 10 years of military rule and some changes in the life of Filipino, which started under the new society, remember this one, martial law was at last lifted on January 2, 1981. We have the Filipino poetry and Filipino songs. Filipino poetry poems during this period were romantic and revolutionary. Filipino songs, many people's songs dealt with the themes that were really true to life, those of grief, poverty, aspirations for freedom, love of God, country, and Philippine. Rebirth of freedom from 1986 up to the present. History took another twist. Once more, the Filipino people regained their independence, which they lost 20 years ago. In the span of 4 days, from February 21 to 25, in 1986, the so-called people power, lakas ng bayan prevailed. Together, the people barricaded the streets, petitioning the government for changes and reforms. Okay, before we'll proceed to the activity, we will have a short recap. Pre-colonial period. The evolution of Philippine literature depended on the influences of colonization and the spirit of the age. The first Filipino alphabet, called Alibata, was replaced by the Roman alphabet. The Spanish period. They were able to manipulate literature by monopolizing it under the religious orders. Literature revolved mainly on the themes of Spanish, European culture, and of course, the Roman Catholic religion. In the American period, the Philippine literature in Spanish time started to lose its track in the first decade. Even though Philippine literature was in English, the preservation of the content of our Filipino experiences was achieved. And the last one, we have the contemporary period, 1946 up to the present. This period started during the rebirth of freedom in 1946. The Americans returned in 1945, and Filipinos rejoiced and guerrillas fled to the mountain and joined the liberating American Army. July 4, 1946, the Philippines regained its freedom, and the Filipino flag waved joyously alone. The chains were broken. Okay, we'll have the activity proper. Give a brief description in its period from pre-colonial to the contemporary period of the Philippine literary history. Pre-colonial, Spanish, American, and contemporary. Good luck and have a nice day ahead. Thank you. There you have it, learners, the Philippine literary history. I hope you learned something new today. Bye-bye!